Hey, Pastor Mike here. I just want to thank you for tuning in and let you know that we have more resources like this available for you on our website. Just a quick note before we begin though. While resources like this can help you grow in ways that God has ordained for you, they are no replacement for gathering with your local church on Sunday. And on that note, if you're not currently connected somewhere, we want you to know you're always invited to Grace Pointe. Visit our website for time and location, and we hope to see you soon. It's been a busy 3 weeks. Very busy 3 weeks. If you heard Jordan share, 50 volunteers have volunteered more than a collective 400 hours to remodel this space to make it home and prepared for our children in our pursuit and our chapel here. And don't pity us, though. Don't worry. It was a joy, a labor of joy. Who you should pity is these Israelites who crossed the Red Sea and are met with a battle. Immediately attacked by the Amalekites. And it's a strange story because you see this great episode of deliverance coming through the Red Sea and the Egyptians crushed and they're under the provision of God. God's hand is there. And then God lets the Amalekites attack them. An organized army attacking a seemingly unorganized people. It's not supposed to look like a fair fight. We should think, wow, these people have never had to go to battle before. They don't have ranks. They only have a couple of leaders here and there. If anything, they have tribal leaders. Will they just look at the clansmen who were good teachers and assume that because they were good teachers, they're good warriors? Don't assume that of me. There's a reason I'm teaching, and I'm not in the parking lot usually. Like there's different roles here. So how does this happen? They are attacked by their own relatives. If you didn't know this, these are Abrahamic people attacking them. Why would their cousins attack them? One person said disunity promotes chaos. Disunity promotes disorder. And disunity hinders peaceful coexistence. Disunity is at the heart of the reason why the Amalekites attack the Israelites. And you might be thinking, well, why? Israel was not united with anyone. They were disunified with all of the Middle East. They'd been slaves for 400 years. So I could really say that about anybody? No. I'm not talking about disunity between Israel and Amalek. I'm talking about disunity between their ancestors. This story goes way, way back centuries. And by digging into the history, the family history here, you'll understand why these people are warring with each other. So let's dig in. I want to run right to the text, and I'll repeat what I've already said here. Disunity, point number 1, has lasting effects and impacts future generations. Point number 1, disunity has lasting effects that impact future generations. So, verse 8, then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Why is this happening? For you to know, I have to tell you some Genesis here. We're in Exodus, but I'm going to tell you some stories from Genesis. And they're not going to be on the screen because I want you to tune in like you're listening to your first grade teacher tell you a story, okay? This is where it goes back to. If you can imagine Isaac praying to the Lord on behalf of his wife. This is many generations before. She was barren, and the Lord answered Isaac and said, don't worry, Isaac, Rebekah will conceive. And she conceived twins. And this is what God said about those twins. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will be separated from your body, and one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. Oh, so it's been prophetic. This was always going to happen. Israel and Amalek were always going to be ununified. They were always going to be at war. So it's almost prophetic. Did they expect it coming across the Red Sea, that they should look out for the Amalekites and think, no, wait, remember, we know what God told our great-great-great-great-grandpappy, Isaac. We remember. I doubt they were thinking it. I doubt they thought, let's keep our eyes on Amalek. But this feud is still happening. There's still 2 nations from one woman's womb. Okay, what else happens? From their conception, these 2 twin boys are at odds with each other. If you know about Jacob and Esau, you know. There's nothing more I can say than you know that these 2 were constantly warring with each other. Jealousy and anger abound in their lives toward each other. So what happens? Jacob's descendants are the Israelites. Esau's descendants are the Amalekites. And who was stronger? Who was stronger than the other? The older shall serve the younger, In other words, the Amalekites will submit to the Israelites. Esau shall serve Jacob, which is counter Hebrew, counter old world. It's the firstborn son that's supposed to have the birthright. Okay? Listen to Genesis 27. Esau bore a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, and then I will kill Jacob. So the older begins to have jealousy toward the younger. Then I will kill my brother. The days of mourning for my father mean Jacob's days are numbered. Okay, or rather, Isaac's days are numbered, and Esau plans to kill his brother. Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you, says their mother. Rebekah pulls the son aside and says, you need to watch out for Esau. He has it out for you. So mom begins to warn Jacob and tells Jacob to flee, run away to Haran, to my brother Laban. Stay there a few days until your brother's anger subsides. So Jacob's and Esau's story is one of jealousy, of the stealing of a birthright. Jacob's name means usurper. So he was kind of like named prophetically for what he would be. He stole the birthright from his older brother, and therefore these two brothers are at odds. And guess what? It carries down into their lineage. Now, the good news for these brothers, I don't want to leave you hanging. The good news for these brothers is they have this great moment of reconciliation in Genesis 33. Jacob's eyes are lifted as he looks, and if you don't know, Esau is chasing him down. And Esau has brought his posse. So as Jacob looks up, he sees an army coming. He sees Esau, and he sees his coming death. This is it. This is what my mother was telling me about. My brothers come to kill me. And as he looks out, he begins to prepare for the coming death. He starts to order up his clan, and he puts the people he loves most in the back. He puts Joseph in the back, hoping Joseph can at least run and make it out of this slaughter. If you remember, some of you remember that. And he runs out and he bows down 7 times to his coming brother, thinking, all I can do is bow and hope for forgiveness. And his brother walks up and he grips him and he cries and they weep together, and Esau kisses Jacob. And it's this wonderful story of reconciliation. But we cannot say the same for their descendants. What's so strange about the Amalekites coming and doing this, coming and attacking Israel, is they had to go 200 miles to do this. Israel didn't walk in Amalek's backyard. Do you hear what I'm saying? Israel didn't accidentally walk in Amalek's backyard and tramp on his tulips, and Amalek comes and devours Israel. It's not what's happening. Amalek had to plan to bring all their hordes 200 miles away. This is an intentional, planned attack. Why? And theologians are kind of like lost here because we don't get told the reason why. We know that the Israelites did not provoke the Amalekites. Israel was just off in a direction they didn't even necessarily want to be. Remember, they wanted to take the easy way to Egypt, if anything, and they've been brought the hard way. We also know the Amalekites knew about the land promise. So maybe the Amalekites were jealous and thought, here comes Israel to take back the land of Canaan. Let's slaughter them while they're weak. There's some weight to that. That could be what's happening. And the Amalekites were also likely worried about a coming power shift in the region. So this 2 million people, they cross the Red Sea, and there's this new strong nation, and word is getting around that Israelites have plundered the Egyptians. And the Egyptians are the big bad boy nobody wants to mess with. So the Amalekites might be taking advantage of an opportunity to attack Israel while they are perceived to be weak before they can get stronger and destroy Amalek. So the war between Jacob and Esau, hundreds of years later, wages on. And if you're thinking, I don't know, I think that's a stretch. I think there's just, do they all really know about their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather's feud? Do they all really have that in mind? Maybe not. But the Bible does teach in many places about one generation's sin becoming another generation's sin. One generation's fight becoming another generation's fight. I love the example of Cain and Abel. Cain kills his brother Abel, and then after that, Cain killed Abel, and then Cain begets Enoch, who begot Irad, who begot I'm trying to remember my Hebrew pronunciation. Mehuel. There we go. I should have practiced it more, right? And then generation after generation begets generation. And then 5 generations later is born Lamech. And this is what Lamech says. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for even striking me, and I killed him. If Cain's revenge was 7-fold, Lamech's is 70-fold. 5 generations. Murder is still alive in Cain's family. And each generation is getting more and more murderous. So I think it's very likely that the sins of Esau and the sins of Jacob are still at play in these 2 peoples. Because what we do as parents echoes down into our children's lives. Our mistakes often become their mistakes. Our sins, they often turn around and take the same sin against their children. What we do echoes down through generations. Anger begets anger, hate begets hate, war begets war. And it echoes in generations. But there's hope because it's possible that peace can also beget peace. Holiness has a more likelihood of begetting holiness than unholiness. One generation of united, devoted worshipers can raise up another generation of united, devoted worshipers. So I said at the beginning of this, disunity has a lasting effect, and the impact can impact all future generations. And I believe that's what this first verse just says. Because if you dig into the history of these clans, it's not surprising to see the older try to kill the younger. Because they can remember the day they've been told about where Jacob was afraid that Esau was going to kill him. And you can be sure that as the Israelites see the Amalekites coming, they are afraid of the same thing. So we have this situation, this war that happens. How does this war happen? This war based on familial disunity. How does it happen? What happens? How does Israel actually win? I want you to see point number 2. It is fitting that God's people rally around trusting only him for victory over every threat. Israel trusts Yahweh. The lesson they learned at the Red Sea was trust Yahweh. We had the great Egyptians bearing down on us at the edge of the Red Sea, and Yahweh provided. So the solution is no different. We need to trust Yahweh in this situation, and that's how they win. I'll read it for you again in case you missed it when Andy was reading it, because it's just an interesting episode that happens here. Look at verse 9. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men to go out and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. That's his contribution to the war, standing on a hill and holding up the staff. It's okay to kind of chuckle at that and say, is he serious? Why not go fight? Well, there's a reason. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. When Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. But whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed and Israel fell. But Moses' hand, it grew weary, as you can imagine, from the battle. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And while Aaron and Hur were there, they held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, because at some point the staff needs hands. And at some point those hands are just shaking and starting to fall, and people have to come prop him up. And I get that. Right now, my back is hurting from 3 weeks of labor. I feel like, Willie, just be ready if you see me faltering. Come up here and just prop me up. So that's literally what's happening. Because if you've ever done something as simple as taking a book and holding it out, it might feel like you can hold it forever. Give it 10 minutes. You'll be in extreme pain just by doing this, okay? And my teacher taught me that in science for some reason when I was in the 3rd grade, and it's just stuck with me. So his arms are growing weak. Remember what this staff represents. This is the staff that turned into a snake. This is the same staff that Moses has had in his possession since Moses was in his own wandering. Do you remember? In Midian, and God met him in the burning bush, and he said, well, how will they believe that this is from you? How will they believe you've sent me? And he said, that staff in your hand, take it with you. And God performed all these miracles through this staff. And Moses is on the hill holding up the symbol of what? The symbol of their deliverance. And that should be the thing they look to and draw strength from. And remember, God fights for us. It's not that the staff is actually having some kind of metaphysical impact on them. Not at all. It has a spiritual, emotional impact, and they're holding it up. In fact, God say to do this. Have you noticed? God didn't say, hold up the staff and I will be there and fight for you. But what's so interesting is they already know God will fight for them. And that actually becomes the anthem of all of Joshua. Holy, honor the covenant. The Lord your God will fight for you as you take back the land of Canaan from all of these Philistines and all of these others. So that staff represents God's provision for miracles. And they remember, our God is high. And when we see the staff lifted up, we remember God is high and lifted up. And he is here. He's among us. He ripped us out of the Red Sea, all safe and sound. And he will pull us up out of this battle safe and sound, just like at the Red Sea. One author writes, the staff is no magic wand. It's having no magical effect. It's like all Old Testament institutions. The external and the visible symbol means nothing unless God gives it some meaning or some power. And number two, it's useless. It means nothing. It's useless unless the obedient use of this external form is accompanied by an internal, invisible motion of the heart of man to believe in something. So the staff is drawing hearts to continue believing in God. This author continues, the whole narrative conclusively shows that God was teaching Israel that the hand of Moses, with whom Israel had just been arguing in the beginning of chapter 17, which we will get to next week. They'd just been arguing with him and complaining to him. It's by his hand that they need to remember they have been led out of slavery. So their victory was completely owed to God's goodness, completely owed to God's provision. Your only hope for victory in life, our only hope as a church for future victory is owing completely to God's provision. Any victory you're looking for in life cannot happen by your own strength. And if you make it happen, you basically experience just like happenstance. You might have made it out by the skin of your teeth and been able to figure it out, but there will be another one down the road that you will fail at. True victory, reliable victory comes only from God's provision for his people. The book of Nehemiah is about the rebuilding of the wall in Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. Nehemiah is called to come from the Middle East, from Babylon, all the way back to Jerusalem, and he leads the effort to build the wall. And in there, they say, when he tells all the troops and the builders, who are the same in this circumstance, he says, when you hear the trumpet call, rally to us there in the place where you hear the trumpet call. And he doesn't say, and we will fight. He says, and the Lord will fight for us. That staff is a rally point. But it's not a physical rally point. He doesn't raise the staff and everyone runs to the staff. He raises the staff and everyone emotionally, spiritually rallies to the same point of confidence in God. It's profound. It is a rally point. But don't stop what you're doing physically where you are. Just make sure that your heart rallies to a common place of belief for us. They all rally to confidence in God when they see the staff. They have a spiritual place they should go, an internal place that they should go. And remember together as a nation, Exodus 6:7, I will take you as my people. I will be your God. You shall know that I am the Lord who has brought you out from under the burden of the Egyptians. And when they see the staff, they remember that truth, and they remember that we are now the people of God. He is our God. He has taken us as his possession. God is still saying to them, you shall know that I am the Lord when you have faith in me and I prevail against your enemies. When you feel near defeat, when you're weary, and I know some of you are weary this morning, emotionally weary, and you're looking for answers. Some of you are fighting a battle against cancer. Some of you are battling a financial battle to stay above water. You feel like you're treading water. Some of you are holding marriages together. Some of you are pleading with God for your children to be restored to the church, to seemingly to faith, you wonder. When you feel defeat, and when Grace Point as a church feels the threat of the enemy bearing down on us, friends, listen close. This building is not where we rally. No building, no staff itself could be a rally point lest it causes our hearts to rally to the same point of faith in a common Lord. If anything, this building is not a rally point. If anything, when you enter, I hope it reminds you of the faith of God on the faithfulness of God for the day he saved you, the day he saved your children or your grandchildren, for the day you remember he delivered you from the things you were needing deliverance from. Our rally point is an internal, spiritual mindset in which we rally our hearts to the throne of God and we trust him for deliverance, which is what Israel was doing. Even though they were battling and waging and swinging, and it's probably pretty bloody and gory, actually. But at the same time, an internal place where they were all in the same place, faithful in Yahweh. So it is fitting that God's people rally around trust only him. We don't rally to a physical place. We don't rally to a building, a field, a lakefront. That's why when people were sad that we were leaving the lakefront, I said, don't worry. At some point, we'll all get it together that no location is what we rally to. We're all rallying eventually, is what we're doing. But while we wait, we rally internally, constantly to the cross. Number 3, it's fitting that God's people regularly call to mind his victories. It's fitting that God's people regularly call to mind his victories. Verse 14, after the war, God does say, this is now the Lord, this is Yahweh saying to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua. I want to come back to that in a moment. That I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. All of Amalek has not been blotted out, just the warriors they sent into battle, which is now they are all likely dead, if not some taken maybe prisoner, I presume. So there are only a few places in the entire Pentateuch, and the Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible, Penta meaning 5, Pentateuch is the books of the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. There's only a few places in the 5 books where God actually tells Moses to write something. One Sinai, which we're coming up to, and one of them is here. So that means this is a really big occasion where you should look in your Bible and say, if it's being written down, this is something significant. God is proving some kind of significant point that he doesn't just prove in every chapter of the Bible or in every chapter of the Pentateuch. God tells him, instructs Moses to write this down and specifically say it in the ear of Joshua. This is interesting. It's difficult to say why they needed to write it down and then go, Joshua, don't forget the day that Amalek came. Like literally recite it in the guy's ear just for Joshua. Why Joshua? Well, it's one possibility is that God, like it said, God will eventually blot out the name of Amalek from under the earth. And God knows Joshua is going to be the successor to the whole reign over the people. He will be the leader, okay? After Moses, Joshua is going to take over. So it's important that the next leader know that this is part of the plan and that Joshua should continue to wage war against Amalek until God's word is fulfilled. It's actually probably the most likely reason we have to think that that's what's actually happening here. But regardless of the reason why Joshua in particular should hear it, God wants the account remembered because, listen closely, on that day, Israel could have been blotted out. He never wants Israel forgetting that when you came across the Red Sea, you could have been blotted out there. But don't forget when your own cousins came to wage war on you, that could have been the day Israel was blotted out. Israel's name, his entire lineage was blotted out from under the heavens. Instead, the Amalekites will, Amalek and his descendants will. They will no longer have a lineage, which is crazy to think about. What God has done, we must never forget. Never forget what God has done in your life. When you walked in yesterday for the open house or you walked in this morning, you probably saw the collage. A lot of you who saw it the first time stopped and went, oh, I remember this. I haven't seen photos of it in years. And that is not a monument to human aspirations. It's not a monument to what we've done or who we are. If anything, it's who God is and what God has done in Grace Point. It's a symbol that redirects our attention to the glory and kindness of God. When you look back and you see Courtney's baptism, I'm sure, Courtney, if you didn't see it because you rushed by and you had kids and I saw you came in with the kids, you might not have seen it. A picture of your baptism is on the wall. And when she sees that, I'm sure she'll say, oh, what a special day. Every time I pass by, I remember God's kindness to me in calling me from heaven and saying, be my daughter. We look at that and remember the kindness of the Lord. I remember potlucks. I remember fellowship. I remember Dick and Nancy Boss. I can't say their names without crying. They're on there. They were a part of our launch team. They're in our launch photo, and I'm so thankful for that. But I remember all the works of God in their lives in Colombia and all the places, Colombia, right? Colombia and all the places they've lived, and they were in Europe, and I just think about all the works of God, all his kindness represented in however many people we have here and all of our families. We just think about all God has done. It's not a monument, like the altar they build. If anything, it's sort of a staff that we look at and we don't see the collage. We remember God's glory and God's goodness. That's why it's there. And when the battle seems tough, and when you feel the weight of the enemy bearing down, I hope that or other things in your life, the word of God certainly itself, would cause you just to rally in confidence to the Lord and say, Lord, I remember, like you told Moses to write this down. Write it down. We kind of say that tongue in cheek to each other when we say something funny. Write that joke down. We don't really mean it. But write this day down, Grace Point. Write down, if you haven't in your heart, write down the lakefront, write down the community center, write down those places we've been, write down the baptisms of Sawyer and Courtney and Denise and my son Timothy and all the salvations we've seen, all the things God has done. Write these things down and constantly rally in confidence. We sang it last week. God was faithful then, he'll be faithful now. And these people, this lesson has come for them because they will need this faith in the desert. They will need this faith. Their generations down will need this faith when they cross the Jordan and into many other battles. Those generations will need to hear about this war. And he says, write it down. It's not just for you, it's for your children. Which brings us to the final point. It is fitting that God's people teach our children to trust him by telling them the stories of his victories. This is written down not just for them, it's written down for next generation and next generation and the next generation. It's fitting that we do the same. These are our spiritual ancestors, and we should follow suit and take the advice of Moses and God here, write things down, and never fail to create rally points and look for rally points where we can be reminded of God's goodness and run to him in confidence constantly, because we will need it, and our children will need it, and our grandchildren will need it, and our great-grandchildren will need it. Because until Jesus comes and wipes away this earth and makes a new earth, the enemy will always be awake, waiting outside their door like a prowling lion to devour. It is fitting that God's people teach their children. So they do not instruct Moses. God does not instruct Moses. No one else instructs Moses to build this altar. God instructs Moses to write it down. And Moses goes an extra step and he builds an altar, a place of worship. And he names the altar, which was a tradition. The altar is named, "The Lord is my banner." Let's show that. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner." A hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So they build this altar, a place of worship, and it's meant to stand. So everyone who passes it goes, the Lord, Yahweh, they hear the name of the Lord. Yahweh is my banner. Okay, like is our banner, is my banner. They build this thing, and in a day and age of us going to sporting events and seeing bronze statues of Kobe Bryant or Shaquille O'Neal in front of the Staples Center, or they haven't put one of Shaq in front of the Amway Arena that I'm aware of. But I mean, we can probably imagine what that bronze statue would look like when a 2022 artist gets a hold of it and he gives Moses abs and he's shirtless and he's just got it in one hand, like the front of a movie poster. Like, they don't do that. Moses doesn't build a statue to himself. He builds a place of worship for the God who has delivered them. That would be like going to the Amway Center and seeing a cross in front of it. Wow, right? Like in the desert, a place of worship Warren Wiersbe says Moses didn't build a monument to himself or to Joshua or to anybody, or even the victorious army of Israel. Instead, he was careful to give all the glory to God for Israel's victory by building an altar and naming it "The Lord is my banner." Just as he lifted up the statue, the Lord will be lifted up at this place of worship. It's profound. The verbiage, "a hand on the throne of God," is admittedly difficult to interpret. It could mean a couple of things. It could mean that when his hand was up, it was like his hand was touching heaven, more philosophically. It could literally mean that this is God making an oath. God has sworn to blot out, that the hand on the throne is God's hand, and God is lifting his hand and making an oath to blot out Amalek. But it doesn't really change the meaning here. Every generation is meant to read what was written and see this altar in the desert, anyone who passes on this road by it, and know that Yahweh is over them. What is really cool too is that Moses lived under Egyptian society long enough to know that it was common that different military units would have banners over them. And in Egyptian society, Egyptian military, every unit, I guess you could call them, would have a banner to their respective god, Anubis, Ra, so and so on. And they erect a place of worship that says, Yahweh is our banner. Oh, that is cool. That's like a forsaking of the Egyptian gods here. It's like, if you had to wonder if we're still going to fall into worshiping those old gods, far be it from us. Yahweh is the banner that is over this military. It's profound. It's really cool. My question for you, Grace Pointe: what will people remember? What will be our banner? This is a place of worship. What's the banner over this place? And you know by talking to a visitor who came here and asking them on Tuesday, what do you remember most? Okay, they could just have something in particular that really touched them, and they might say a handshake, a warm handshake. I haven't gotten that at a church before. Awesome, we should keep doing that. Greeting team, keep doing that. Keep shaking hands, keep being kind to people. But if every single visitor fails to say the gospel message, truth was the most profound thing, and that's the banner over this church, then we might be doing something wrong. I prayed earlier, let this be a dispensary of truth, of biblical truth. If no visitor can even catch on to the place that we love the Bible, we teach the Bible, we believe it's inerrant and true, and we want you to know the God of the universe by getting to read it for yourself, we failed. We have failed. What is our banner? And there is a reason I ask you what that is, because our children would answer the same. If you ask a child on Tuesday, what did you enjoy most? And they go, the candy. They're just being a child, right? They're being childish. But if week after week after week, they never say, I've really enjoyed learning about God. At no point they're catching Jesus by being here. What's happening? What's happening in those rooms? That's the reason I brought up visitors, because visitors would likely have a similar kind of answer to our children, and our children will be even more blood earnest honest with us. I liked hanging out with my friends. I know Rob would feel like something's wrong if he asked the youth and polled them, and after a year, their answers were still just hanging out with friends, playing darts upstairs, playing basketball, the music's cool, and no one's mentioning the God of the Bible. What is our banner? What is the banner that is over us? Our children are like little visitors that we bring to church, and I don't think we realize that. Parents, tune in. Your children might just be extended visitors. That should be sobering for us. When they're 20, will they keep doing this, or are they only doing it because I forced them and I made them a visitor for 18 years, and then when they went to college, it was up to them what they do, and they stopped going because they were only ever visitors to the church? When in actuality, their parents and their parents' parents and everyone here can stand and testify, I've seen God do great things. I've seen God destroy Amaleks. I've seen God part Red Seas. And we're supposed to write it down. We're supposed to teach it to our children. build places of worship that represent him and lead them into worship, and they only end up extended visitors. It is a pandemic in the church. We have to keep the main thing, too. We have to keep the main thing the main text. This text tells God's people to tell their children about God's victories. So what will your children remember generations from now? What will your children's children's children remember about God generations from now? Will they remember about a building? Or will they remember about a merciful, wonderful, loving, forgiving God? Years ago, I worked for a Christian company that had chapels on Wednesday, and they graciously invited me to preach during chapel, and I did. And during the sermon, I was teaching a similar lesson to this, where our text ends, which is, this has got to be recorded for future generations. What God did on the battlefield, future generations need to know about. And we say the same thing. What Jesus did on Calvary, future generations need to know about. And I was teaching that truth to this room full of Christians, I presume, many of them. And in the sermon, I told everyone that children are like sponges that soak up everything. Everything we say and everything we do, everything we let them experience, they soak it up. And if we let them watch 10 hours of a cartoon in 1 week, then they're going to be singing that cartoon's theme song by Sunday more than they'll sing Waymaker. I only spent a few minutes illustrating that point, by the way. Only a few minutes. I didn't pause here long. I just made the point quickly, but I made a mistake. I made the mistake of using a sermon illustration and purposely singing one of those theme songs in front of this group of probably 400 to 500 people. And it was the theme to Paw Patrol. And some of them, it was the last thing they heard me say. Because all they could think, and I'm not going to sing it now because I'll lose you, all they could hear from that moment forward, and this is adults, but all they could hear was the Paw Patrol theme song. And I didn't know that I'd lost them, but afterwards, my manager at the time walked up to me and said, "Great sermon." And I was expecting him to say, "Great sermon, such a good reminder that I need to preach the gospel in my household every day." He didn't say that. He said, "Great sermon. My kids watch Paw Patrol too." Enjoy it. It's a good joke, but it was a fail of preaching. I entertained in that moment, and I lost them. I did. And if you entertain your children and your determination is to be your child's friend, and you just want to entertain your children and keep them a visitor to the church until they're 18 and can figure it out on their own, you're going to reap that sort of reward. But if you preach the gospel in your household and live the gospel, and I don't mean be perfect, I mean when you sin, apologize and ask for forgiveness and say, "See, I'm a sinner too. I need Jesus. This is why I gave my life to Christ, because I can't be perfect and neither can you." Preach the gospel, let it live out in your life. Then they'll get that and they'll cling to that rather than clinging to their own righteousness. If the main thing doesn't stay the main thing, you lose people. And I let Paw Patrol become the main thing in my message for about half the room. And that's what they left with. I promise you, parents, if the gospel doesn't stay the main thing in your household, the world will dangle, will force shiny, glittery things right into your child's face that will just pull them right away from God. Watchman Nee said, "It is so easy to become more attached to the gifts of God than the giver." And even I should add, he says, to the work of God than God himself. You can go so fast in the Great Commission, you leave the commission giver behind in your heart. And you stop rallying to him and you rally to something that's lesser than him. I'll say it again, because the future of this church, the future of your household, the future of your household depends on it. If the main thing doesn't say the main thing, something else will become the main thing. If Israel doesn't keep Yahweh the main thing in their culture, in their new society, something else will become the main thing. And if you know their history, you know that it will. and it will lead to great wars, murders, king after evil king, eventually the exile, until the Messiah comes and offers forgiveness for all that sin. So we can see, if we can put the text back on the screen, the 4 points back on the screen, disunity has lasting effects and it impacts future generations. And it did for these people, and it does for us. And it's fitting that as we go through seasons, whether former disunity ever has a future impact on Grace Point or on your life, it is fitting that whatever does come, we rally around God. We rally. We have rally points. We rally around trusting only Him for victory over every threat. And it's fitting that God's people regularly call to mind what He's done in the past and trust Him for the future. And it's fitting that when those victories come, we don't hide them from our children, but we constantly preach what God has done for me. We give our testimony to our children regularly. So in closing, I ask you and our church, what is our staff? Moses held up a staff symbolic of God's victories back in Egypt. So what is our staff? What do we look to? The staff is not a person at a pulpit preaching. I'm not a bronze statue like with a Bible with abs, because I'm gonna disappoint. That's not our rally point. We don't look to a preacher and say, whatever that is, that. We don't look to a human. What is our staff? It's not collage. It's not the collage. Even the collage can recall the works of God to our mind. It is not that. It's not a building. It's not even a building, a place where the gospel is preached. That can't be the thing you look to and draw your faith from. The staff we look to is the cross. And it's not even this cross. Don't let it be this one. Don't be idolaters. It's the one cross that our Savior hung on and bled out on. Colossians 2 says, "And you were once dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, but God made you alive together with Him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of the debt that we had built up, that debt that stood against us, and all of its legal demands." Its legal demand was hell. Its legal demand was your punishment. But Jesus took it. He set it aside, nailing it to the cross. The Israelites looked to a staff and they remembered Egypt and God's deliverance. We look to the cross and we remember Jesus' deliverance of our soul from hell and from the grip of sin. This is what we teach our children. This is what we remember. This is where we look when the battle is tough. This is where we look when life is pressing down on us. We remember the cross and we rally in confidence that our God, who was faithful on the day that He let His only begotten Son die for us, if He was faithful then, He'll be faithful today with whatever your needs are. Charles Spurgeon said, "Do you remember when He made all your darkness and sorrow to pass away, as in a moment, by saying to you, 'I am your salvation'? Have you forgotten that word of pardon? I can never forget it. Even if I outlive Methuselah, it must still remain in my memory," says Spurgeon. The words came with power when I looked to the cross and heard the absolving words, "Your sins are forgiven of you." No priest can give an awakened conscience rest, nor any other, except the great high priest, Jesus, our Melchizedek, the sinner's pardoner. No words of hope nor thoughts of consolation can ever breed such peace within the spirit as the blood of Jesus brings when it speaks within the heart far better than things of Abel. It reconciles us unto our Father, and so gives perfect peace when our beloved speaks His word of promise. How it has revived our drooping spirit. It gives us healing. It gives us consolation. It gives us joy. Today, we begin a new chapter in our church history. But no mistake, make no mistake, the battle is the same every day. We fight to win souls for Christ. We fight for our own holiness. We fight for our children's spirituality. We fight for our grandchildren's salvation. And our battle is spiritual. Remember what Paul said. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against the authorities. Our Amalek is against the cosmic powers over the present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And as the battle wages on, when we feel weak, when God brings us through a Red Sea, but we look over the hill and here comes the apparent slaughter. As the battle comes, the battle doesn't let up. We know. We look to the cross. We look to our staff. We look to the cross, and we draw faithful confidence that our God, who was faithful on the day of our salvation, on the day that he hung on that cross, he'll be faithful right now in all things. Amen. Amen. Lord, we praise you for being a faithful God. You were faithful that day when, for reasons you truly do know, Amalek waged war against Israel. We might not feel like that is an illustration for our everyday life, but then again, there are moments we probably feel that a physical war is the perfect illustration for the emotions we feel, for the things we are facing day to day. So Lord, when we are in the midst of battle, regardless of what we fight, we do remember that our ultimate battle is to win souls for Christ. It is to do the Great Commission, your mission here on earth, while you have given us time and the tools to do so, and the Spirit to lead on, and the Word to tell us the truth, and the people to be with us. Let us draw confidence as we continue to look to the cross, our staff. Thank you, Jesus, for the day you died and paid the penalty for our sin. For anyone now not believing, I pray this be what Hebrews calls their day, their today, their day of salvation. For anyone in this room who hasn't said, Jesus, you're mine, make me yours, make me your child, may this be that day. Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you for the wars that you wage for us, the battles you win for us. Thank you, our great warrior God. In Jesus' name, amen.